Welcome to our channel, The Secret Net. Before we start the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new video. Also, I thought it would be a fun idea if everyone could leave a comment to let me know where you're listening from in the world. Chapter 1: Arrival. The town of Hollow's End sat quietly under a blanket of mist, its cobblestone streets winding through ancient, weathered buildings. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding, and the townsfolk moved about their business with downcast eyes, avoiding each other's gazes. At the heart of the town stood the imposing Blackwood Manor, a sprawling estate owned by the Blackwood family for generations. The Blackwoods were a powerful family with a dark secret that had woven itself into the very fabric of the town, a secret that no one dared to discuss. One gray afternoon, a stranger arrived in Hollow's End. Elias Thorne was a tall man with a stern demeanor and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see through the souls of those he met. He wore a long, dark coat, and his presence alone was enough to unsettle the townsfolk. Elias had heard whispers of the Blackwood family and their sinister reputation. Unlike the townspeople, he was not content to let sleeping dogs lie. He had come to Hollow's End with a purpose to uncover the truth. Elias checked into the town's only inn, a quaint but slightly dilapidated building called the Whispering Pines. The innkeeper, a portly man with a nervous disposition, handed him a key with trembling hands. "Welcome to Hollow's End, Mr. Thorne," he said, forcing a smile. "I hope you find your stay comfortable." Elias nodded curtly and made his way to his room. As he settled in, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The walls seemed to close in on him, and the whispers of long-forgotten secrets echoed in his mind. Later that evening, Elias ventured to the local tavern, the Rusty Lantern. The patrons were a rough-looking bunch, their eyes darting suspiciously at the newcomer. Elias took a seat at the bar and ordered a drink. As he sipped his whiskey, he overheard snippets of hushed conversations about the Blackwoods. "They say the Blackwoods are cursed. Strange things happen around that manor. No one who goes near ever comes back the same." Elias leaned in closer, trying to catch more details, but the conversation ceased abruptly when the townsfolk noticed his interest. Undeterred, Elias decided to take a walk toward Blackwood Manor. The night was eerily silent, the only sound being the crunch of gravel under his boots. The manor loomed ahead, its dark silhouette casting a long shadow over the town. Elias approached the iron gates of Blackwood Manor. As he peered through the bars, he saw the outline of the grand house, its windows dark and lifeless. The gardens were overgrown, and a sense of decay hung in the air. Just as he was about to turn away, he heard a voice behind him. "You shouldn't be here." Elias spun around to see a woman standing in the shadows. She was dressed in a simple but elegant dress, her dark hair framing a face of striking beauty marred by a look of deep sorrow. "I'm Elias Thorne," he said, extending a hand. "And you are?" "Lila Blackwood," she replied, ignoring his hand. "This place is dangerous. You need to leave." Elias studied her for a moment. "I've heard the stories, Miss Blackwood. That's precisely why I'm here." Lila's eyes widened with fear. "You don't understand. This place, it's cursed. My family, we're cursed." Elias felt a chill run down his spine. "Then help me understand. Tell me what's going on." Lila shook her head. "I can't. It's too dangerous. You need to leave now, before it's too late." But before Elias could respond, Lila disappeared into the shadows, leaving him alone at the gates of the manor. The next day, Elias began his investigation in earnest. He combed through the town's archives, looking for any information on the Blackwood family. He discovered that the Blackwoods had been in Hollow's End for over 2 centuries, their influence and wealth growing with each generation. But there were also rumors, whispers of dark rituals, mysterious deaths, and unexplained disappearances. Elias decided to visit the town's church, hoping to find more clues. The church was a stark, Gothic building, its tall spire reaching toward the heavens. Inside, he found Father Montgomery, an elderly priest with a kind but weary face. "Father, I'm looking into the history of the Blackwood family," Elias began. "I've heard some disturbing things." The priest sighed heavily. "The Blackwoods have always been troubled. There are things best left forgotten, Mr. Thorne." "But I need to know the truth," Elias insisted. "For the sake of the town, and for my own peace of mind." Father Montgomery hesitated before finally nodding. "Very well. There is something you should see." He led Elias to a small, dusty room at the back of the church. Inside was a collection of old, tattered books and papers. The priest handed Elias a leather-bound journal. "This belonged to the first Blackwood patriarch," Father Montgomery explained. "It details the unspeakable acts that took place in the manor." Elias took the journal, his hands trembling with anticipation. As he began to read, the full horror of the Blackwood family's secret started to unfold before him. Elias sat in his room at the Whispering Pines, the leather-bound journal lying open before him. As he read, the weight of the Blackwood family's dark history pressed down on him. The journal was filled with accounts of occult rituals, blood sacrifices, and pacts with dark entities. The first patriarch, Nathaniel Blackwood, had been a man obsessed with power and immortality, willing to do anything to achieve it. The entries grew more sinister as they described how Nathaniel had summoned a malevolent spirit, binding it to the manor in exchange for wealth and longevity. But the spirit's presence came with a terrible curse that would plague the Blackwood family for generations. His children were born with strange markings, and anyone who dared to uncover the family's secrets met a gruesome end. Elias felt a chill run down his spine as he read the final entry, written in a frantic scrawl. "The spirit grows stronger. It feeds on our fear, our suffering. I fear it will consume us all. May God have mercy on our souls." Determined to learn more, Elias decided to return to Blackwood Manor that night. He packed a flashlight, a notebook, and a camera, hoping to document any evidence he might find. As the sun set and the town was shrouded in darkness, Elias set out toward the manor. The iron gates of Blackwood Manor creaked open as Elias pushed them, the sound echoing through the still night. He made his way up the overgrown path, the manor looming ahead like a dark sentinel. With each step, he felt the weight of unseen eyes watching him. Elias reached the front door and hesitated. Taking a deep breath, he pushed it open and stepped inside. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the floorboards groaned under his weight. He switched on his flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness to reveal a grand but dilapidated foyer. Cobwebs hung from the chandelier and dust covered every surface. As Elias explored the manor, he felt a growing sense of unease. Shadows seemed to move at the edge of his vision, and faint whispers echoed through the halls. He found himself drawn to a door at the end of a long corridor. The door was locked, but Elias noticed a key hanging from a hook nearby. He took the key, his hand trembling, and unlocked the door. Inside, he found a small, dimly lit room filled with old books and artifacts. In the center of the room stood an altar, covered in strange symbols, surrounded by candles. As Elias examined the altar, he heard a soft sobbing sound. He turned to see a figure standing in the corner, partially hidden in the shadows. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a young girl with pale skin and hollow eyes. She wore a tattered white dress and had long, dark hair that seemed to float around her. Elias's heart raced as he realized she was not of this world. "Who are you?" Elias asked, his voice barely a whisper. The girl looked at him with sorrowful eyes. "My name is Emily. I was one of the Blackwood children." Elias felt a pang of sympathy. "What happened to you, Emily?" "The spirit. It took me," she replied, her voice trembling. "It takes anyone who gets too close. Please, you have to leave before it takes you too." Elias shook his head. "I can't leave. I need to uncover the truth and end this curse." Emily's eyes widened with fear. "You don't understand. The spirit is too powerful. It won't let you." At that moment, the temperature in the room dropped and the candles flickered. A cold, malevolent presence filled the air, and Elias felt a hand grasp his shoulder. He turned to see a dark, shadowy figure looming over him, its eyes burning with an unholy light. Elias stumbled back, his flashlight flickering. The figure advanced, its form shifting and twisting. Emily screamed, and the sound seemed to fuel the entity's rage. Elias fumbled for his camera, snapping a few photos before the spirit lunged at him. He felt an icy grip around his throat, choking the breath out of him. "Leave this place." The spirit hissed, its voice like nails on a chalkboard. Elias struggled to free himself, his vision blurring. Desperation gave him strength, and he managed to break free, gasping for air. He grabbed a nearby book and hurled it at the spirit, which let out an ear-piercing shriek before dissipating into the shadows. Emily rushed to his side, her eyes filled with fear. "You need to leave now. It will come back, and it will be angrier." Elias nodded, his resolve hardening. "I will, but not until I find a way to end this." He took one last look at the altar and the room, committing every detail to memory before fleeing the manor. A new ally. Back at the inn, Elias reviewed the photos he had taken. Most were blurry and indistinct, but one showed the dark figure clearly. As he studied the image, he heard a knock at his door. He opened it to find Lila, standing there, her face pale and drawn. "I saw you at the manor," she said quietly. "You shouldn't have gone there." "I had to," Elias replied. "I need to know how to end this curse." Lila sighed and stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. "There might be a way," she said, her voice trembling, "but it's dangerous and it might not work." Elias leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Tell me." Lila took a deep breath. "There's a ritual, an ancient one that can banish the spirit, but it requires a sacrifice, and it must be performed at the heart of the manor where the spirit is strongest." Elias nodded, determination in his eyes. "I'll do it, whatever it takes to free this town." Lila shook her head. "You don't understand. The sacrifice must be willing, and it will cost you your life." Leah stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. He'd come to Hollow's End seeking the truth, but now he faced the ultimate choice. Could he sacrifice himself to save the town, or would he find another way to break the curse? Leah sat in silence, contemplating Lila's words. The thought of sacrificing himself was daunting, but the idea of leaving Hollow's End to suffer was unacceptable. He needed to find another way. There had to be a way to break the curse without paying the ultimate price. Lila, is there any other way to perform the ritual without a sacrifice? Elias asked, his voice firm with determination. Lila hesitated, her eyes reflecting a mix of hope and fear. There are legends of another way, but it's risky. The spirit is bound by the power of its own name. If you can learn its true name, you might be able to weaken it enough to banish it without a sacrifice. Instable, where can I find its name? Elias pressed. There's an old library in the man's basement, Lila explained. It contains records and books that date back centuries. If the name is anywhere, it will be there. Elias nodded. Then that's where I'll go. Will you help me? Lila looked at him, her eyes filled with resolve. Yes, I'll help you, but we need to be careful. The spirit will do everything it can to stop us. With a plan in place, Elias and Lila prepared for their journey back to Blackwood Manor. They gathered supplies, including holy water, salt, and protective charms. As night fell, they made their way to the Manor, determined to uncover the spirit's name and end the curse once. The Manor loomed ahead, even more foreboding in the moonlight. Elias and Lila approached cautiously, their senses heightened. They entered the Manor and made their way to the basement, the air growing colder with each. Basement was a labyrinth of old stone corridors and darkened rooms. Their flashlights flickered as they searched for the library. Finally, they found a heavy wooden door adorned with ancient symbols. It creaked open, revealing a room filled with dusty shelves and countless books. Elias and Lila began their search, pulling books from the shelves and flipping through their pages. Hours passed as they sifted through the old tomes, the tension growing with each moment. And here's our eater, Lila whispered, holding up a book bound in black leather. This one mentions the spirit. Elias took the book and began reading. The text detailed the history of Nathaniel Blackwood and the dark rituals he had performed. It spoke of the pact with the spirit and the curse that followed. Finally, Elias found what they were looking for, the spirit's true name, as Rathoth. Was armed with the spirit's name. Elias and Lila made their way to the heart of the manor. The atmosphere grew oppressive and a sense of dread settled over them. They reached the room with the altar, the candles flickering as if reacting to their presence. Elias stood before the altar and began the ritual, chanting the words he had found in the book. As he spoke, the room grew colder, and the shadows seemed to close in around them. The spirit appeared, its dark form twisting and writhing. Rhino's exhalation, and then the sense the beast called out, his voice strong, "I command you to be bound by your true name." The spirit let out a horrific scream, its form flickering as if in pain. It lunged at Elias, but he held his ground, repeating the spirit's name with conviction. The candles flared, and a powerful wind swept through the. With one final desperate scream, the spirit was pulled back, its form dissipating into the darkness. The room fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting. Elias and Lila stood in the now quiet room, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. The spirit was gone, banished by his true name. The curse that had plagued the Blackwood family for generations was finally broken. Lila looked at Elias, tears of relief in her eyes. "You did it. You freed us." Elias nodded, exhaustion washing over him. It was a team effort. We both did. As they left the Manor, the first light of dawn began to break over Hollow's End. The town felt different, lighter, as if a dark cloud had been lifted. The townsfolk, sensing the change, came out of their homes, their faces filled with hope. Elias and Lila walked back to the Whispering Pines, ready to rest after their harrowing ordeal. But as they passed through the town, Elias couldn't help but feel that this was only the beginning of a new chapter for All Hallows End. The darkness had been banished, but the scars remained, and it would take time for the town to heal. For now, though, they had earned a moment of peace. During peace, millenniums, in the weeks that followed the banishment of Azrathoth, Hallows End began to recover. The oppressive gloom that had hung over the town lifted, and the townsfolk started to rebuild their lives. The Blackwood Manor, once a symbol of fear, stood as a reminder of the past and the courage that ended its curse. Elias and Lila spent their days helping the townspeople who were slowly warming up to the outsiders. The town's only inn, the Whispering Pines, became a hub of activity as the townsfolk gathered to hear the story of how the curse was broken. One evening, as Elias and Lila sat by the fireplace, a group of townsfolk approached them. Among them was Father Montgomery, his eyes twinkling with gratitude. "We owe you both a great debt," the priest said. "Without your bravery, the curse would still hold us in its grip." Elias shook his head. It was a team effort, and the town's strength played a big part too. You all endured so much. Lila nodded in agreement. It's time for Hallows End to move forward, to embrace a new beginning, a new dawn. As days passed, Elias and Lila realized that their work in Hallows End was coming to an end. The town no longer needed their help, and the whispers of new mysteries and adventures called to them. On their last morning in Hallows End, Elias and Lila took one final walk through the town. They stopped by the church where Father Montgomery blessed their journey and visited the now abandoned Blackwood Manor one last time. Standing at the gates, they reflected on how far they had come and the battles they had fought. "I think it's time," Elias said, looking at Lila. "Time to see what else is out there." Lila smiled, agreed. "There are many more mysteries to uncover, many more places that need our help." As they left the Manor, the townsfolk gathered to bid them farewell. They had come to respect Elias and Lila, not just for breaking the curse, but for their kindness and courage. Elias and Leah mounted their horses, ready to set off on their next adventure. As they rode out of Hallows End, the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, casting a golden light over the town. The future was bright, and the shadows of the past had finally been banished. The legacy of Hallows End. Years later, Hallows End thrived as a peaceful town. The story of Elias Thorne and Lila Blackwood became legend, passed down through generations. The Blackwood Manor, once a place of fear, was preserved as a historical site, a testament to the bravery that had saved the town. Elias and Lila's adventures took them far and wide, but they never forgot Hallows End. They continued to fight against the darkness wherever they found it, becoming legendary figures in their own right. Their legacy inspired many to stand up against evil and seek the truth, no matter the return to it. And so, the story of Hallows End came to a close, not with a final ending, but with a new beginning. The town that had once been shrouded in darkness now stood as a beacon of hope, its people forever grateful to those who had freed them from their curse.